In a Spanish-style mansion nestled in an upscale Boca Raton neighborhood, the emerald green pool water rippled gently under the dazzling sunlight. In the courtyard surrounded by white stucco walls, bougainvillea bloomed in vibrant colors. The humid air characteristic of the region enveloped everything, even in the early morning. "Mom, are the pancakes ready?" It was Sunday morning after service at First Baptist Church. In the kitchen, Diane Howard was skillfully making pancakes with practiced hands. The sweet aroma of maple syrup wafted through the spacious open kitchen. Her 3-year-old son Ethan's eyes sparkled with anticipation as he peeked over the counter. "Just a few more minutes, sweetheart. Would you help me in the meantime? Could you set the table?" The blue and white bone china that Ethan carefully took from the white cabinet was a precious wedding gift from Gregory's mother. Diane, a former pediatric nurse at Mayo Clinic Jacksonville, smiled as she watched her son's careful movements. Her profile reflected deep gratitude for these peaceful everyday moments. "Going golfing again today?" Her husband Gregory looked up from his newspaper. While scanning the economics section of the Wall Street Journal, he confirmed his usual weekend golf plans. As CEO of a real estate development company, he had achieved great success during the 2008 real estate bubble. 7 years after their church wedding, this 3,000-square-foot house stood as testament to that success. "Yes, but I'll play with Ethan in the pool first. I bought him a new float yesterday." "Ah." Gregory started to say something but stopped, his expression clouding momentarily. His hand holding the coffee cup trembled slightly. It had started 6 months ago. The changes were subtle at first. He stopped participating in family prayers and suddenly became strict with their son. He developed an unusual obsession with swimming in particular. Even at Sunday school, he began observing other children obsessively. Boys should be independent early. All the kids his age can swim. Don't coddle him. Men don't cry. The frequency of such remarks increased. His voice carried an urgency and irritation he'd never shown before. He also started being absent more often, citing work as the reason. Sometimes when he returned late at night, there was an unfamiliar aftershave scent. Diane noticed, but she was afraid to confirm her suspicions. 3 months ago, a series of break-ins began in the neighborhood. Houses with pools were particularly targeted. The Homeowners Association held an emergency meeting to discuss security improvements. That night, Diane made a decision. Without telling her husband, she installed the latest Ring security camera by the pool. It could be monitored in real time via smartphone and had recording capabilities. She had the installation company sign a confidentiality agreement. That afternoon, after returning from the Home and Garden Club meeting, Diane sank into a deck chair by the pool. The humid air clung to her skin. As hurricane season approached, the air grew heavier. She could hear housewives returning from town center at Boca Raton gossiping. "You know, at that barbecue party the other day. That real estate company CEO. They say he was with a young woman." Diane strained to listen. Rumors about her husband's sightings drifted on the breeze. Somehow, it seemed connected to his frequent absences under the pretext of work. A leaf fell onto the pool's surface, creating concentric ripples as it spread. Like those ripples, an unsettling premonition spread through her heart. A mother's intuition told her something was about to happen. Her anxious reflection wavered in the pool's surface. The shadows at the bottom of the 10-foot-deep pool seemed to forebode events to come. Watching Ethan chase butterflies in the garden, Diane quietly prayed. "Lord, please protect our family." It was a week after her regular checkup at Mayo Clinic. On a humid Thursday afternoon, Diane's cell phone rang. The new iPhone's screen flashed with a number indicating a call from the hospital. "Mrs. Howard, we need you to come in for detailed testing." Jennifer Thompson's voice, the oncology nurse specialist, echoed through the receiver. Her voice lacked its usual warmth that Diane was accustomed to from their yearly checkups. "We found an abnormal shadow in your right breast tissue. Dr. Richardson recommends detailed testing as soon as possible." Diane's maternal grandmother Elizabeth had passed away from breast cancer shortly after Diane graduated from nursing school. The vivid memory of her grandmother's emaciated form, discovered too late in its terminal stage and departing for heaven in just 6 months, came flooding back. Next Thursday will be a full day of testing. Starting with mammography at 8 a.m., followed by MRI, and possibly a biopsy if needed. As Thompson continued her explanation, Diane's mind went blank. Outside the window, palm trees swayed in the hot wind. Typical midsummer Florida weather. The region's characteristic humidity felt heavier than usual on her shoulders. 7 days until the next test. During that time, while suppressing her anxiety, Diane began searching for someone to watch Ethan. The First Baptist Church daycare she usually relied on was unavailable due to facility inspections ahead of hurricane season. The Home and Garden Club members all had packed schedules. At a lunch meeting at Town Center at Boca Raton, she consulted with her usual group. "My sister might be available. But he's been scared of strangers lately, hasn't he?" "Yes, he's going through separation anxiety." Her friends exchanged worried glances. Everyone understood the difficulty of watching a 3-year-old for an entire day. That evening at dinner, the table was set with chicken fricassee, specially prepared by their maid Maria. The white wine sauce, usually Gregory's favorite, wafted its aroma through the air. "I'll watch Ethan on the day of your tests." Gregory suddenly announced this. He stopped cutting his chicken and looked at Diane with a serious expression. "Really? But what about work? Thursday happens to be open. I'll reschedule the meetings." Diane felt uneasy about her husband's offer. Recently, he had never volunteered to care for their son. Rather, he had left all childcare matters entirely to Diane. Even for weekend Sunday school, he had been consistently absent, claiming he needed to review work documents. Across the table, Gregory tilted his wine glass. The deep red wine shimmered in the chandelier light. His alcohol consumption during dinner had increased lately. Something was definitely changing. Late that night, Diane visited her best friend Sarah, who lived next door. Through the backyard divided by white picket fences, the warm light from Sarah's kitchen welcomed her. Their friendship had begun the day they moved into this upscale neighborhood. "If anything happens, call me right away." "Yes, thank you. I'll come running if there's an emergency." The two continued their quiet conversation over herbal tea. But it's strange that Gregory suddenly offered to babysit. "He's changed recently, hasn't he?" "Yes, we hardly see him at church anymore." "And those rumors?" Sarah's brows furrowed slightly. She too seemed to have noticed the recent changes in Gregory. The rumors from the barbecue party at town center. The sightings with a young woman. Everything was piling up as an ominous premonition. As Diane was leaving, Sarah grabbed her hand with a serious expression. "Call me immediately if anything happens. We're family." Those words brought warm tears to her eyes. When she returned home, Gregory was already shut away in his study. The bluish light from his laptop leaked through the door crack. Hushed conversations on his mobile phone. Late-night work had become routine lately. Just in case, she prepared Ethan's favorite toys and snacks, along with emergency instruction sheets. Allergy information, the primary care physician's contact details, insurance card copies. She prepared for every possible situation a mother could think of. She didn't neglect to check the pool security camera's operation either. The latest Ring system continued sending clear footage to her smartphone. The water's surface melded with the darkness of night, looking like an eerie black mirror. The day before the test, Diane went to check on her son in his second-floor bedroom. Surrounded by nautical-themed wallpaper, Ethan was breathing peacefully in his sleep. He was clutching the new swimsuit Gregory had bought him, lost in dreams. "Mama, can we play in the pool tomorrow?" At his sleep-talking words, Diane's heart clenched. Anxiety and premonition weighed heavily on her heart like a dark shadow. In the back of the closet was a life-size doll used for Christmas decorations. For some reason, its presence suddenly bothered her. The doll's golden curls closely resembled Ethan's hair color. The quietly reclining doll seemed to hold special significance this night. In the night sky, clouds hung low, portending hurricane season. Distant thunder seemed to forecast coming events. The sound of waves carried on the sea breeze. When she returned to the bedroom, Gregory was already asleep. An empty whiskey glass sat by his pillow. His smartphone screen glowed bluish-white. Messages from an unknown number. Diane didn't peek at the screen. She wasn't ready to know the truth yet. A mother's intuition told her tomorrow would hold special significance. That night, she woke up multiple times. The sound of the pool water seemed abnormally loud. As if it were an omen of what would happen tomorrow. Mayo Clinic waiting room. 15 minutes until the testing begins. In the space surrounded by white walls, Diane heaved a deep sigh. Anticipating morning traffic, she had left home an hour earlier than planned. I-95 was already showing signs of rush hour, but she managed to arrive on schedule by taking back roads. When she left, Ethan was still sleeping. She had gently kissed his forehead and tucked his favorite camouflage blanket around him. His small sleeping face filled her with an almost painful tenderness. "Mama will be back soon, sweetheart." In the kitchen, still fragrant with pancake breakfast, Gregory had been reading the newspaper as usual. However, she had noticed an unfamiliar cell phone beside his coffee cup. The wall clock in the waiting room ticked slowly. The tense atmosphere of other patients waiting for their tests hung in the air. Diane mechanically flipped through the magazine she'd brought, not taking in any of the content. Then, her smartphone rang. Seeing the displayed name, her heart rate suddenly spiked. "I'm making him swim." Gregory's voice flowed from the receiver. His tone was different from his usual composed manner, somewhat excited. She could detect the characteristic slurring of alcohol. "What did you say?" "I'm keeping him in the pool until he can swim by himself. He's a boy, don't coddle him." In the background, she could hear ice clinking. Was he drinking alcohol at this hour? The uneasiness she'd felt at breakfast hit her like a physical blow. "Gregory. It's 10 feet deep. This is too dangerous. Stop this nonsense." Other patients in the waiting room turned to look at Diane in surprise. But she had no capacity to care about that now. "Shut up. You don't understand. This is a father's decision. I'm doing the right thing." His voice carried a hint of madness she'd never heard before. "Please, stop. I'm coming right." The call was cut off abruptly. The mechanical end-call tone from the receiver seemed unnaturally loud. With trembling hands, Diane operated her smartphone screen. The footage from the Ring security camera appeared. The blue pool surface filled the screen. And then, there was Ethan's small figure, standing at the pool's edge. His new orange swimsuit gleamed bright in the morning sun. But his expression clearly showed terror. Even through the screen, she could see his small body trembling. "Mrs. Howard, it's time for your tests." A nurse in white called from somewhere distant. She held test preparation documents in her hands. "I'm so sorry. There's a family emergency. I need to postpone the tests." Leaving the confused nurse behind, Diane rushed out of the clinic. The morning heat of South Florida struck her cheeks. The temperature had already exceeded 85 degrees, and the parking lot's asphalt reflected heat like a steam bath. Running to the parking lot, she desperately made phone calls. "Sarah. Please. Protect Ethan. Gregory is." Out of breath, she explained the situation. Sarah's calm voice on the other end of the phone supported Diane, who was on the verge of panic. "I understand. I'm going right now. I'll protect him. You drive carefully. I'll contact 911 too." While driving, various scenarios raced through Diane's mind. Why was Gregory acting this way? Was someone manipulating him? Or, 20 minutes later, contact from Sarah. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as the vibration announced the incoming call. "It's okay. Ethan is safe. He's at my house now. He's crying, but he's not hurt." A sigh of relief escaped her. But this wasn't over. What about Gregory? He seems to have gone to a barbecue. Took several bottles of wine, neighbors saw him with a young woman. Those words suddenly connected all the previous unsettling feelings. Returning home, Diane retrieved the life-size doll from the closet. She hurriedly dressed it in her son's swimsuit, adjusting the hair and skin color to match. Her hands trembled. But what she had prepared for was now becoming reality. She positioned the doll by the pool, adjusting the camera angle. The water's surface gleamed bright in the sunlight. The wind had stopped, leaving the surface mirror calm. Checking the recordings. Gregory's abnormal behavior. Ethan's face contorted with fear. And the figure of a young woman. Everything had been recorded. Around 4 p.m., Gregory's figure appeared on the security camera, returning from the barbecue. His gait was unsteady, clearly intoxicated. He approached the pool. The sight of his son floating on the surface. Rising bubbles. Panic crossed his pale face. That expression was clearly recorded by the camera. Ethan! His scream echoed through the quiet residential area. In the interrogation room at the Boca Raton Police Department, Gregory covered his face with both hands. 48 hours had passed since the discovery. I admit to the affair. Gregory's confession began from an unexpected angle. His voice, now sober, showed no trace of his previous arrogance. The relationship with Rachel Martinez began 6 months ago. The detective took notes dispassionately. When she heard that name, Diane, listening in the adjacent room, suddenly stood up from her chair. That evening, local news broadcast shocking footage. Real estate mogul arrested on attempted child abuse charges. Female accomplice arrested simultaneously. Special news broadcast by major local station WPTV. When she saw the woman's face on screen, Diane gasped. Rachel Martinez. She was a patient's family member Diane had met at Mayo Clinic Jacksonville 5 years ago. The memory came back vividly. A mother who had lost her son to congenital heart disease. Despite the medical treatment being appropriate, she had misunderstood Diane's care as cold. You don't understand. The pain of losing a child. Her figure leaving the hospital shouting those words still remained in Diane's heart. For revenge. The truth revealed during the investigation was more sinister than anyone had imagined. From her psychological trauma and social isolation, Rachel had formulated a meticulous plan. She had identified Diane's family through the First Baptist Church directory, thoroughly investigating the husband's weaknesses. Gregory's character flaws. His tendency toward alcohol dependence. And his narcissism. She had skillfully exploited them all, inciting abuse of his son. You can be a strong father. Weak children deserve to die. Rachel's whispers had gradually eroded Gregory's sanity. The Department of Children and Families intervened, and the situation progressed rapidly with cooperation between local police and child protective services. A strict investigation began based on Florida child abuse laws. The footage captured by the Ring security camera became decisive evidence. Abnormal behavior by the pool. child neglect while drinking alcohol, and even scenes of meetings with the accomplice. Everything had been recorded. We seek severe punishment under Florida child abuse laws. The prosecutor's words echoed in the courtroom. Members of the Home and Garden Club sat in the gallery. Meanwhile, good news arrived from Mayo Clinic. The detailed examination results were benign. No concerns about the breast tissue abnormality. "It's God's will," Sarah said tearfully. The First Baptist Church community warmly supported Diane and Ethan. Their places were always set at the potluck dinner after Sunday service. Having received full compensation, she decided to return to work as a pediatric nurse. "I want to use this experience to help families in similar situations." A new life was beginning. She purchased a small house near town center at Boca Raton. The church spire was visible from the second-floor window. There was no pool. Instead, Ethan's play equipment stood in the spacious backyard. On Sundays, Sarah's children came to play. "Mama, can we play together again?" "Yes, anytime. Mama will always be right here." Church bells rang from the Fountain Plaza at Town Center at Boca Raton. A wind announcing a new season began to blow in the evening sky of Gator Country. Ethan's laughter carried on the warm breeze. And one more change. Diane decided to establish a counseling program at the hospital. A grief care program for parents who had lost children. There's always hope, no matter the situation. New patients listened to her words. Sometimes, among them were people with expressions similar to Rachel's. But this time, she knew how to accompany them through their pain. At First Baptist Church's Sunday School, prayers are still offered every week for children's safety. Within that circle, Ethan sings hymns with his new friends, smiling. "May the Lord's blessings be upon you." The words of prayer dissolved into Florida's blue sky. It seemed to announce the beginning of a new chapter.